Space, the final front. Well, anyway, space has many dangers, and while there are some traditional technologies to cope with this fact, there is also some biological or genetic methods that we could use to aid us as well. Let's quickly list some dangers of outer space. Let's start with cosmic radiation. Without being on a planet with a magnetic field, we are exposed to the radiation of space. Space is so expansive that it would take significant portions of our lifespans just to leave the solar system. About 14 to 35 years with current day probe technology, not even holding any passengers, keep that in mind, so it would take even longer with a larger load. Next up is low gravity, or microgravity, that has harmful effects such as muscle and bone degeneration. Then there's enclosed spaces. This is not something that's often touched upon, but microbes can easily spread in a confined environment. And we also technically know of some mental effects of being trapped in an enclosed space for too long. Next up is an obvious one, the lack of oxygen. Obviously, space is a vacuum. There's a limited food and water. We can only bring so much of it with us when we go into space. But let's see what we can do with genetics or biology to combat some of these problems, if we even can. Regarding cosmic radiation, current scientific research indicates that human radiation resistance can be potentially improved through gene therapy, or antioxidant engineering, and the optimization of DNA repair mechanisms, primarily inspired by extremophiles. Basically, microorganisms that can survive in extreme environments. That's what that term means. Scientists are exploring the insertion of radio-resistant genes from bacteria into human cells to enhance DNA repair efficiency and reduce oxidative stress. Space agencies are even exploring this method. Metabolic modification studies suggest that tweaking metabolic enzymes or using nanoparticles can sensitize cells to modify their environment to be less sensitive to radiation damage. On the medicine front, they are radioprotective drugs or compounds that protect living organisms from harmful effects of ionizing radiation, typically administered before or shortly after exposure. Mistofen is the primary FDA-approved chemical agent for reducing radiation therapy side effects, so there are some biological, medicinal. There are genetic or biological solutions to cosmic radiation. For long-term space travel, other than extending the human lifespan by another 50 to 100 years, we'll have to enter some kind of human-induced hibernation. In June of 2005, scientists at the University of Pittsburgh, for the resuscitation project, announced that they managed to place dogs in suspended animation and then bring them back to life, most of them without brain damage, by draining the blood out of the dogs' bodies and injecting a low-temperature solution to their circulatory systems, which in turn kept the bodies alive in stasis. After 3 hours of being clinically dead, the dog's blood was returned to their circulatory systems, and the animals were revived via electric shock to their hearts. The hearts started pumping blood around most of the body, and the dogs were brought back to life. Now, this is still incredibly risky, and it requires you to be clinically dead, basically, so maybe give this research some time. Meanwhile, we have doctors from the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston announced that they placed pigs in suspended animation with a similar technique. The pigs were drained of most of their blood, along with a simulated via scalpel severe injuries. After pigs lost about half their blood, the remaining blood was replaced with a chilled saline solution as the body temperature reached 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The damaged blood vessels were repaired and the blood was returned. This method was tested 200 times with a 90% success rate. Again, that's a 10% failure rate. I think we want a 1 to 2% failure rate before we try to do this on a large scale for humans. It's actually been suggested that bone lesions provide evidence of hibernation among the early human population, whose remains were retrieved at the archaeological site of Annapurna. In a paper published in an anthropology journal, researchers stated that primitive mammals and primates hibernate, which suggests there is a genetic basis in our physiology for hibernation as well. Right now we have induced hibernation in humans. This ability to hibernate would be useful for a few reasons, such as saving lives of seriously injured or ill people, by putting them in a state of hibernation. But right now, our things are only very temporary, and not for long trips in deep space. So this might be a decade or two off. Based on what I said, we don't have the genetic or biological capability to reliably do this without a 5 to 10% fatality rate. But combined with cryogenic suspension, I think in the future this might be possible, with a lower fatality rate, hopefully. I don't think we'll ever get to zero. I imagine a chemical similar to the one in the first story with the dogs would allow us to enter hibernation and survive long space trips. A genetic response to low gravity could be possible with research that indicates that modifying the LRP5 gene, which regulates bone formation, could create individuals with significantly higher bone density, mitigating the rapid bone loss, 1 to 2% per month in microgravity. This approach is analogous to how certain populations on Earth have naturally evolved adaptations, such as people who live up in higher altitudes have more efficient oxygen use. To combat muscle atrophy, scientists have identified specific genes that are disrupted through simulated microgravity, which, while current studies on mice suggest that genetic diversity influences susceptibility to muscle weakening, future interventions might involve editing these genes to preserve muscle fiber integrity and vascular growth without the need for constant mechanical loading. That's working out to prevent your muscles from deteriorating. Basically, while on Earth, the gravity does have a constant stress on your circulatory system, and without it being there, it could cause some trouble. So that's what's talking about as well. But a non-genetic solution would be wearing some kind of special suit that's weighted and that applies pressure to your circulatory system to mitigate the negative effects. So kind of combining the genetic and technological method to find a fusion that works. For the microbe threat that we mentioned earlier, viruses cannot survive long in the harsh vacuum of outer space due to the extreme radiation and temperature fluctuations and the lack of a host. However, there is viral reactivation and astronauts and space flight conditions, including microgravity, cosmic radiation, psychological stress. These things all compromise the human immune system, leading to the reactivation of latent viruses. Along with the fact that since most human space missions are planned to mostly provide plant-based food to the astronauts, plant and microbial viruses, along with human pathogenic ones, represent a major issue for space travel. Microbial evolution and microgravity aboard indicates that microgravity alters the evolutionary trajectory of viruses, particularly the ones that infect bacteria. In 2026, this year, a study found that certain viruses could still affect E. coli in space. The process was delayed compared to Earth. Both viruses and bacteria accumulate distinct genetic mutations in microgravity. Some viruses evolved enhanced abilities to bind to bacterial receptors, while bacteria develop some stronger defenses. These space-driven adaptations could potentially be engineered on Earth to create more effective therapies against drug-resistant superbugs. So helpful for more than one thing here. So these last two issues, there being the lack of oxygen and food and water, will kind of be tackled in one go. So the International Space Station has a water and oxygen cycle system. It's kind of gross because it uses pee and sweat and anything that is water and cycles it through a filtration system to be used again. But in terms of a genetic answer, we have genetic engineering of algae that can be utilized to significantly enhance oxygen production for biomedical applications. But in this case, we just have it on the spaceship as well. Researchers have developed engineered C. vulgaris coated with red blood cell membranes to serve as an oxygen generating system for treating hypoxic tumors, where the algae survive and continuously produce oxygen within the host environment. So we can introduce something like this on the spaceship. We also have genetically engineered plants that can better absorb and utilize sunlight, or even go without water for longer periods of time, to better grow food, improve the amount of nutrition we have in them. Significant economic impacts are evident in major crops in 2017. So these GM strains accounted for 89% of corn, 94% of soybeans, and 91% of cotton in the US. These advancements have led to a 22% increase in yields. We already have this capability, and I assume this will be even better in the future. So in summary, we do have some answers to the dangers of outer space with genetic editing. Of course, this will come into play in Aevium comics as well. I'm in the process of creating it, and I hope you like and subscribe this video to follow along, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye.